Titan was at the halfway point between the night's departure and its reappearance. They stripped their clothes and, sleek with olive oil, began a contest of the level discus. My name is Eleanor Johnson. I'm an oil painter and I won first prize in Jackson's Art Prize 2025. Slick with Olive Oil was made as part of a series I did responding to this very old poem by Ovid called Metamorphoses. The poem itself is quite dreamlike and strange. The translation that I was inspired by was by Stephanie McCarter. Slick with Olive Oil is a quote from her translation of the story about Apollo and Hyacinthus. Hyacinthus and Apollo are lovers and they were playing discus together. Apollo threw his discus and unfortunately it bounced off the floor and killed Hyacinthus. And in Apollo's grief, he transformed Hyacinthus into a hyacinth flower. I've actually added hyacinth grape flowers to the painting because I do add a lot of natural elements to my paintings. I don't actually think that's historically correct, but so I took creative liberties on that. The quote referring to their bodies that were rubbed with olive oil, glistening in the sun. And to me, that was quite an evocative kind of image. And it reminded me of Turkish oil wrestling. To me, it kind of looked aggressive, but also at the same time quite sexual. And so the painting itself became like this response to the story in the poem, but also thinking about masculinity today, how play can flip over into aggression. Also for the painting, I found some images of dancers and they had a similar kind of movement to them. They're all kind of linked. So it was looking at an ancient story, but from a contemporary lens in a way, but became something quite different. It felt very surreal to find out that I won first prize. I definitely wasn't expecting it. It was the first time, I think, in my life where I genuinely felt like it could have been a dream. It was a lovely surprise. I grew up in Oxfordshire. I spent a lot of time in gardens, kind of in imaginary worlds, and my parents have spent a lot of their lives making beautiful gardens. I think from a very young age, creativity was really encouraged in my family. And then I got to school and I had some really, really wonderful art teachers. In secondary school, I remember first time doing some big paintings and thinking, oh, maybe I could do this forever. I went to do a foundation course. I tried to get into art school for my BA, but didn't get into the ones I wanted to go to. So I ended up doing history of art instead. It ended up being a blessing that I didn't get into art school first time round. But after that, I found that I had these bits of knowledge from my degree and I wanted to bring that into my painting and bridge those two things, like the theory side and the material painting side. And so I did my master's at City and Guilds and here we are now. Historical art has had a big influence on my painting practice. I went to France and Italy a lot growing up, saw a lot of art in the museums and the churches. Possibly my favourite fresco is in Brescia in Italy. I discovered it when I was doing a residency at Palazzo Monti, which was an amazing experience. The most beautiful frescoes. But I just loved the way that they completely covered the ceiling. I loved the immersive quality. Definitely that feeling of excess and faded colour and beauty. It was this complete sensory overload. There are some incredible tapestries in the V&A Museum in London called the Hunting Tapestries. I remember kind of stumbling upon them. I wasn't looking for them or anything. Obviously the V&A can be quite busy, but when you step into the room, it's very quiet. And the tapestry material, they absorb the sound. It's very much, you feel like you're stepping into this very calm space. Kind of a bit like a church. Like, I think some museums can be quite church-like. I love that feeling of immersion as well, when you're looking at these huge tapestries which are filling the walls and they're so high. The tapestry itself is really interesting and lovely, and it's quite absurd. It's very busy, like there's a lot going on. Yeah, I love that tapestry. Colour's definitely central to my practice. For a few years I was just doing black and white charcoal drawings and paintings, just black and white. I didn't want to go into colour because it just seemed like this impossible thing. And at that point I started looking at old master paintings and doing colour transcriptions of them. I've continued that to this day. And that was an education in how colour works, how colours work together, but also it taught me how to mix colours. I'm pretty obsessed with Rubens. He did paint quite disturbing things, but at the same time they have this incredible beauty, and I'm really interested in how those two things can work at the same time. And I think that's something that I like to explore in my own work. The two Rubens paintings that inspired the colour palette for Slick with Olive Oil were the Obsequies of Decius Mus and the Drunken Silenus. The colour that kind of dominates in this painting around the figures is permanent sap green, which is a lovely deep green. And for the hyacinth grape flowers, I used cobalt blue, which is a really nice rich blue as well. The alizarin crimson, light blues, and also the flesh tones. The composition is so filled by figures. It's mainly the colours of the bodies that are dominating and not so much the Rubens colour palette. But more recently I've been looking for colour inspirations from gardens and flowers. This area is a constant source of inspiration because there is so much wildlife and flowers, and it's just very peaceful. It definitely suits me. When I start a painting, I'll have a palette in mind. During the process, I'll just stick to that palette, and I don't tend to stray out of that because I find that sometimes if you add a colour spontaneously, it can throw the balance off and it can be quite jarring, but sometimes not. So it's kind of a balance. The first stage is the background colour palette, and it's almost a colour transcription, but it's a very, very blurry one, and I'll move around the colours. It doesn't look much like the original painting. I arrange my colour palette from light to dark. I definitely couldn't live without like a few essential colours like burnt umber, raw umber, ultramarine blue, cadmium red, yellow ochre and white. And I keep my whites for light tones separate from my whites for dark tones. So zinc white, you have to often build up layers to make it more opaque and more bright. So zinc white can create quite a dreamy atmosphere where the lights are quite low, whereas titanium white, if you want to have a really big impact with a painting, it's great to use from the get-go, because then, they're two very, very different things. My favourite colour at the moment is King's Blue Light. It has a wonderful luminosity to it. It's beautiful depth of colour. One of the consistent themes in my work is the human body. Willem de Kooning said, "Flesh is the reason oil paint was invented, because it has this amazing gloopy quality that kind of evokes skin in some ways and folded flesh." I've really been interested in the way that skin folds over each other. So I've been actually venturing into ceramics a little bit. I'm interested in how skin looks over bone and over muscle. I love Michael Harding oil paints. I think that their pigments are beautiful, very, very rich, and there's such a huge variety to choose from, so that they have a pigment for everything. I like oil paint because I feel like it's so versatile and you can do so many different things with it. You can use it thickly, mixed with linseed oil. It adds so much fluidity to the work, so that when you're making a painting, you can move the oil paint around because the linseed oil has made it so fluid. So I do like to use Chelsea Classical Studio, Gamsol. Yeah, I just think it's a lovely medium. In terms of brushes, I like to use the Jackson's Mottler brush with synthetic hair. And generally I do go for synthetic hair because it has a softness to it. It just means that working with the oil paint it feels quite smooth. I also love Marseille soap pellets for cleaning paintbrushes. They prolong the life of your paintbrush, and they can even like save a paintbrush if it's accidentally been left out. My studio's in Oxfordshire, in the countryside in the UK, and it's a very lovely place to work. The space itself that we're in right now is an old stable where the cows used to be fed when it was a working farm, and I converted it into a studio space during COVID. I tend to paint with the lights on, not just from daylight. There's not quite enough natural light in here for that. I tend to keep the books closest to me that are my main inspiration in that moment, and I'll keep them kind of on the tables nearby so I can just flick through them when I need to. And yeah, it's just really nice during the day. You can hear the birds singing all the time. I can take my dog out for a walk in the fields. I really try to come in 5-6 days a week. As soon as I come in my studio, put it on my overalls, and that kind of puts me into the work headspace. Plait my hair every time. I like to set up the space and make sure everything is a nice atmosphere. And so I'll usually light some incense, put some music on. Once a week I'll pull a tarot card and then get to work. I can spend a period of a few weeks of quite intense painting, but then other times I'm doing research or I'm out trying to find inspiration. I think the paintings that I find are my most successful are the ones that are done confidently. I like things to be loose, energetic. Literally, your movements with the paintbrush, you're not holding back because you know what you're doing. And I also find that music really helps with that, but without any kind of a vocal element to it. It really helps me concentrate, and it makes me get into the right headspace. It helps me get into a state of flow and focus. I'm lucky that it's a bit of an obsession of mine, painting, so I've never struggled with getting into the studio every day because I just want to be here. The themes of my paintings jump around quite a lot because I can get bored quite easily. I tend to work in series, and I kind of think they each look at a different topic. For instance, the last few years I've been really interested in mythology and fairy tales. I'm also very interested in creating a kind of imaginary world and kind of a dream-like atmosphere. And there's this state called the hypnagogic state, which is between being awake and being asleep. I have experienced it quite a lot where I'll be in this state and I might like imagine things around me, and it can be quite unsettling in the moment and quite absurd and strange. And so I definitely take that experience of the hypnagogic state into my painting, and I really want to make it look like it's this in-between moment, which is kind of shifting in and out of focus where things aren't complete. So those are the main themes of my work. I actually have like an ideas board where I keep up my main influences, like images of artists that I like and ideas that I'm thinking of, and I kind of write little notes around my studio. If I'm painting something and something's gone really well or something's gone really badly, I'll take a photograph and then I will write some text over the top of the photograph, just like what colours I used, what technique might have worked really well or not well. I find it really useful for documenting what I do because you can so easily forget it. Well, I really easily forget it. When I'm painting from photographs, which I do quite a lot, I try to not refer to them too closely because I find that the painting for me becomes too rigid and it loses its abstraction. If I'm looking at a photograph while I'm painting, I've got notes around my studio saying squint. And so when I'm looking at the photograph, I'll deliberately blur the image in front of me so that it abstracts. And then hopefully when you're painting, it's got a looseness to it, which is more energized and less rigid. I turn my canvas upside down and that completely abstracts the image. It stops you from working too literally, and something about flipping the orientation. It's the same if you look at the painting in a mirror. You're suddenly able to see where something's not working or if you need to adjust something. I find that process really helpful. So I always have multiple paintings on the go because oil paint takes quite a long time to dry. I'll have drawings for other paintings that I've planned. The ones in here at the moment are actually from last year. I didn't have time to do them. Yeah, I'm always coming back to things. I keep everything even if I don't like it because you never know what it might spark. Even if you're at a point where your painting can be your sole income, I've found it helpful having other sources of income and another job so that you're not worrying about will this sell, because then your work is quite heavily affected by that. I would argue that you're probably not making your best work. It's important to trust your instincts while painting, in my case. If something isn't feeling good anymore, then it's okay to try something new, and it's okay to make work that isn't amazing and stays locked away, but it's good to try new things. Everyone works differently, and it's good to just find your best way of working. As when somebody in a watered garden plucks violets or poppies, or else lilies, with rigid yellow pistils. Withering, they droop their heads, too heavy suddenly, and gaze not up, but downward at the earth. Like this, his face reclines in death.